En las páginas 78 y 79, got some more there too. Let's go 78, 79. This is ER verb conjugations and IR verb conjugations. Notice the pattern. Back into this a little bit here. AR verbs you already know, and if you think about the pattern, when you've got the little 6 chart, the yo form always ends in O. The tu form ends in the letter S. Nosotros form, over in the top right of the little 6 chart, ends in MOS, mos. The vosotros form, middle of the right hand side, ends in IS. And the ellos form, ellas, ustedes, that ends in the letter N. Those patterns are going to hold true for all these verbs that you do, AR, ER, and IR. If you can get that pattern in your head, that helps a lot right there. Because then what do? Back up a little further. If it's an AR verb, you're going to put an A in front of all those letters, except for the O. If it's an ER verb, you're going to put an E in front of all those letters, except for the O. So that just makes it easy right there for you. The pattern holds true. All you need is an A or an E if the verb is AR or ER. If the verb is IR, though, the IRs and the ERs kind of merge together along the way throughout the history. So the IR verbs take on some of the ER endings, and then they add a couple of their own. So there, for the tu form, for the IR verbs, you get ES. For the usted form, you get E. But then for the nosotros form, you get IMOS. For the vosotros, y'all, you get the IS, just as it stands. Put an accent on the I. And then for the ustedes form, you go back to EN. So you got a little mixture there of those two to work with. It's a little confusing that way, but it's also easier because you have less endings to memorize. So look over that chart really well. Take a look at the endings. Keep in mind, yo goes with the letter O. Let's say you have an ER verb and you have the word ustedes. Out of the 6 possible endings, EN is the only one that can go with ustedes. You can't mix and match these things. It's just, that's it. You're stuck. Ustedes means EN on the end. It's going to show up. If it's an ER verb and you're going to say nosotros, you better have an EMOS on the end of it. You can't do nosotros with an O on the end. You can't do nosotros with an S on the end, just an AS on the end, or I'm sorry, ES. You have to go EMOS. If you have tu, the form of tu, then you have to have an ES on the end. You can't put any other ending on there. It wouldn't work. It's not allowed. Page 79. You got some examples of that. Oh wait, look at the bottom of page 78. You've got a few more verbs, some of which don't show up in the vocab list, but you'll need to know these words. Aprender, to learn. Creer, to believe or to think. Leer, to read. Correr, to run. Beber, to drink. Vender, to sell. Deber means must or should. Notice there's no to in front of that because we don't ever say to must or to should. We do say to owe, and that also means owe. Deber, think of the word debt, D-E-B-T. That's where it came from, right off wherever they got deber from, same evolution of the language. And an easy way to remember the verb is you must pay your debts, you should pay your debts, you owe money. All that stuff works with deber. For an example, if I say debo, D-E-B-O, take off the ER, put on an O, debo, now I'm saying I should. If you know the word to pay is pagar, you could put a little sentence together and say debo pagar. I could ask you, debes pagar? Should you pay? ES on the end to make it you. Debes pagar? Sí, debo pagar. You can play with these things all that you want. Over on the top of page 79, you got a little group of IR verbs too. Let's see, I don't know if all of them are in the vocab list, but I don't think so. Asistir, to attend. Abrir, to open. That one's not on the list. Recibir, to receive. That one is. Escribir, to write. That one is. And decidir, to decide. That one's not. Okay, so you got a couple there that aren't on the list, the vocab list anyway. Unless they show up in another box here. Maybe they do. I forgot now because I looked at them. But you got to know them. Make sure you've got them in your minds. So the practica, letter A. We got the word comer. We got to put in all those blanks there. I'll just read them through and tell you the meanings. You check this before you do it. Before you listen to me, try to do it. See if you can figure out which ones go in there. Just look for clues around the blanks. What person is involved? Is it yo? Is it usted? Is it ustedes? Is it nosotros? What is it? Number 1, the first person says, ¿Dónde comen ustedes los sábados? Where do you all eat on Saturdays? Next person says, Nosotros comemos en nuestra casa. We eat in our house. ¿Dónde comes tú? Where do you eat? Next person says, Yo como en mi apartamento. I eat in my apartment. Número 2. Vivir, to live. ¿Dónde vives tú? Where do you live? Next person says, Yo vivo en la calle Quintana. I live on, Quinta. I live on 5th Street. ¿Y Ana y Lupe? And Ana and Lupe? Ellas viven en la calle Magnolia. They live on Magnolia Street. Número 3. Recibir. ¿Cuánto dinero reciben ustedes? How much money do you all receive? Yo recibo $500 y Tomás recibe 700. I receive $500 and Tomás receives 700. 4. Leer. ¿Qué periódico leen ellos? What newspaper do they read? El New York Times. ¿Qué periódico lees tú? The New York Times. What newspaper do you read? Yo leo el Wall Street Journal. I read the Wall Street Journal. Número 5. Vender. Vender is the first one. Let's see. The first line will take vender. ¿Dónde venden ellos sándwiches? Where do they sell sandwiches? Then we've got to put creer and abrir here. En el café El Yunque. En El Yunque Café. Pero yo creo que ellos no abren hasta las 7. But I think that they don't open until 7. Creer means to believe, but it also means to think in this exact context. What do you think? Do you think we're going to win? That would be creer. Do you think they're open now? That would be creer. You're going to learn at some point the word pensar, which means to think, but it's not used in this particular context, not used like this in Spanish. It's more used for, what are you thinking about? Like, what's on your mind right now? And what do you think of that? As in asking your opinion. That's what pensar does for you. Okay, we're going to get to that later. But creer, do you think we ought to go? That'd be creer. Like, do you believe? Anytime it can be like believe, that's what it is. Número 6, beber, to drink. ¿Qué beben ustedes? What do you all drink? Nosotros bebemos Coca-Cola y Celia bebe Pepsi. We drink Coca-Cola and Celia drinks Pepsi. Número 7, deber, must or should. ¿Qué idioma debo estudiar yo? What language should I study? Usted debe estudiar portugués. You should study Portuguese. Escribir. ¿Ustedes escriben en inglés? Do you all write in English? No, nosotros escribimos en español. No, we write in Spanish. Correr. ¿Alberto corre en el parque? Does Alberto run in the park? Remember that do or does is inside the verb in Spanish. The answer, sí. Y yo corro con él. Yes, and I run with him.